Fine, Ethan. I'll look for Dan. Not sure he would expect me to do this without a time machine. But I think there's a way to eliminate when he's not. Okay, so knowing my brother, if he's in the past, there's no way he's not trying to make a big splash in American history. Even if he's not in America. Let's check the index of this world history book. No. Nope. No Dan in this one. All right, let's check this American history book. All right, because I think I was right. If he's in the past, he's in America. Just gotta check. No, nothing different about Benjamin Franklin. Wait, this doesn't look right. Now, is this a Dan thing or a Blue Dong incident thing? President Funny Valentine? Who the hell is that? Disappeared mysteriously after attending the horse race known as Speedball Run? Believed to have been involved in the occult. Could be Dan. Historically said the quote, dirty deeds done dirt cheap? Sure, Dan loves alliteration, but I don't think he would reference AC/DC over any other band. Oh well. Must be in the future then. Can't do nothing but wait. Or freeze myself. No, that'd be too cold.
Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Hello, I'm Cidnya. You can call me Cid, and I go by they, them.
And I'm Jake. I go by he, him. And you read that really good. Better than I ever do it. And I'll make this.
I'm so excited to be on today's episode. For all you listeners out there, we are going to be talking about something I'm very passionate about, something I have like the most brainworms for, something that I think I'll go down in history for knowing like way too much about, and that is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, I really caught you filling out this stuff just straight off the dome.
Oh yeah. Okay. So everyone at home, we had like a little Google Doc, and I like an hour before we sat down to record, I literally just started typing up away just everything I knew about JoJo off the top of my head. It was a little embarrassing to get clocked like that. I was like, ooh. So for everyone at home, if you don't know what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is, it's anime, manga. It's anything but normal. The Joestar saga is just so strange, and the legend begins with a boy and his foster brothers. Battles that continue for well over a century. There's vampires to sentient plankton. The family, the Joestar legacy and lineage, they've battled many strange things, and they overcome most of the time. And when it doesn't, it makes me angry.
I mean, I was gonna say something about the end of part 6, but I'm gonna save that until we to the spoiler part of the series.
Yeah. I was
episode.
like, part 6 is...
All right. So, created by Araki Hiko in 1987 as his third serialized manga, the first being Cool Shock BT in 1983, and Boa in 1984. Cool Shock BT was a magic meets sleuthing series, whereas Boa is a massive display of gore with a teen who becomes a bioweapon.
Then there's JoJo, which is weird and, as some might say, bizarre. One of the interesting things about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is that it was considered for the longest time to be the longest running shonen like manga published on like Shonen Jump that like didn't have an anime adaptation. But that changed once David Pro started adapting it. And after part 7, it made the jump from Shonen Jump to Ultra Jump. So now like the rest of JoJo, which like comes out intermittently, like currently with JoJolion, is an Ultra Jump now, which is a different publication. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is I mean, bizarre, weird, a lot of things. But I think the popularity of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure comes from a lot of different places because it's so massive and it's so large. For me, I think it's weird. I think it's silly. I think it's very gory. I think it's bombastic. It's like, it's goofy as hell. Like, I love all of these things about it. And I think other people can resonate with certain aspects of that. It's one of the series that's just so dramatic and over the top that I think people find it charming, or at least like I know I do. Like, I think there's like a weird draw to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because it's just so wacky. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, each part brings something extremely different, which, I mean, I can just list those off. I mean, Phantom Blood is an occult story. Battle Tendencies is a pulp story. I mean, Stardust Crusaders, I guess it's also kind of a pulp story, but it's also more of a world-hopping adventure, rather than just like, it doesn't have that pulpy feel. But then there's Diamond is Unbreakable, which is like a slice of life with a splash of noir.
Yeah.
Best part. And then Golden Wind is a mob story, and then Stone Ocean being a prison story. And then there's Speedball Run, which is I
think it's like a west. I think in the easiest sense, a western.
I guess a western. And then there's JoJo Leon, which is I guess a Navy story.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But like you said, like each part brings a lot of different things to the table, and that's because it blends a lot of different genres all at the same time. Each part is never the same. Unlike anthologies, like you theoretically could watch all of JoJo out of order and not really miss a lot of things, but you would mix the core of what makes JoJo so special, which is like a story about like an entire family's like lineage throughout like centuries. And I think throughout this exploration of family and why you never get things being the same is because Araki really loves to experiment with the systems of power. There's always a new set of characters. Despite the family core, the Joestars always being the same, each part is focused on a different Joestar, and so you get to see a lot of different personalities.
Well, then there's Giorno.
Yeah, and then there's Giorno, which we'll talk about that later.
Also likes to play with his art style, and which I want to talk about because that's the thing I love. I think about a lot. Wow, so different.
Yes, like, I completely agree. The art style shifts, and his ability to kind of blend that hyper realism with like these really, really intricate, like uncanny, like fashion sort of art throughout the years is like really, really intriguing to me. Like, I find his love for fashion.
That's why the OVA failed. Yeah. Because it did not do that.
Yeah, and there's just such a history with JoJo being like a passion project for Araki that like it seeps into the pages and readers can experience that. And then when you have a company like David Pro doing the adaptation of JoJo, it's like it kind of changes the game of what shonen is, what it could be, and like where it could go. Because unlike a lot of other like typical shonens, JoJo is one that like consistently breaks that formula, but nothing ever reaches the levels that JoJo has. So it still stands on its own today, just like it did in the 80s, just like it did in the 90s. And each part is
there's not like, part one, you can go, oh yeah, there's a lot of like, you can compare it to like some of the older stuff like Fist of the North Star. But like everything after that point is, it's uncomparable. You can't compare it to anything.
Yeah.
What's going on in manga.
It's unreal. It's just really unreal to me. And then when, you have David Pro doing the production and the adaptation of the anime where they're like working hand in hand with like Araki himself, like with the stylistic changes per season to kind of reflect the shifts in art from the manga, but like they choose their own separate art style. They have autonomy over that. But then they work hand in hand with like the coloring palettes.
They kind of do pick what would be the closest thing to the most iconic part of the art from those parts. Because even in each part, they all kind of look different.
Mm-hmm. And they work hand in hand with Araki. He's one of those people who like his IP, his franchise, his series, so to speak, a lot of the like spin-off things are penned by him or completely overseen by him and his team. Like you can't have Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe without it just being literal like Rohan Kishibe fan fiction written by the creator himself. And so I think it's clear that JoJo is something that Araki is passionate for, and it brings just this really beautiful like community between like creator, like consumer, and then like other creators taking his work and like giving it to like a whole new set of people. Yeah.
It is a lot. There's a lot to it. But let's talk about we've talked about I guess you touched on the themes. Who may like this, because there's people who like Dracula, Fist of the North Star, One Punch Man, Twin Peaks, rock and roll, David Bowie, Indiana Jones. I wrote people who like references.
Yeah, like I said, like this is clearly Araki's passion project. So it's like my friends used to joke that, oh, you could always tell whatever like Araki's hyperfixation is depending on like what chapter you're reading, because all of a sudden there's just like why are we learning about bugs in this part 4 chapter? Araki, like what's with that? It's like, oh, he must have
Why is there a kid who can transform and says he's an alien?
Yeah, it's like, okay. And but I think that's what like the charm of it is, that it feels like very early on Shonen Jump gave him a lot more freedom to do whatever he wanted, because part 1 kind of like popped off so hard during a time where like Fist of the North Star was really popular. So like when you have Jonathan Joestar kind of mimicking like the main character, and there's a lot of really weird gore, but also there's a lot of what's the word, like for something that's like flashy, for like, shock, like there's a lot of like shock value to JoJo, and sometimes it feels really out of place. But like in part 1, you've got some really gnarly violence that it just kind of took like the whole.
Yeah, if you're thinking about when it came out, a lot of that stuff was more so implied.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you see a lot of stuff. I'm trying to save some of this stuff from the discussion part, because I don't want to get carried away.
Yeah, it's so easy to do, and that's it's like who would like this?
I'm trying to be the straight man here,
and it's like such a loaded question, because I think anyone could find something to like about JoJo. Like, it's impossible to confine it to one single genre, one single entity, one single like famous piece of work, when it encompasses all of the works and music and interests that Araki himself likes. So it's like either you vibe with him or you don't, and like that's kind of that.
Yeah, I've tried to get a few people into it. They just didn't vibe with it. I'm like Dan. Dan didn't like people were like, "Oh yeah, just you can skip parts 1 and 2," and then he went to part 3 and he didn't like stands.
What?
Yeah.
What? That's like, oh, okay. Anyways, moving on.
Clearly, he didn't see Naranja's plane, little Aerosmith. But yeah, so you can watch all of this on Netflix. I know that, and you can also watch Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe on there as well. And soon, the last batch of episodes for part 6 will drop on December 1st. So keep your eyes out for that if you're watching it already.
But if you've never started JoJo and for some reason you came across this episode and you're like, wow, I should do it. Okay, let's have a talk about where is the best place to start, because this gets the fandom up in a rile. I have a personal opinion about it. I don't know if it's different from what you feel, because you can read what my thoughts before I say them. So if you have any objection, that would be the time.
I now know what you're going to say. I feel like Joseph.
Okay, you could start first, because I feel like that's the more popular opinion.
Okay, so you want me to say the second one that you thought or the first one you thought?
Okay, well, I'll just start, because I thought you meant you thought that part 2 was where people should start.
Oh no, I think you kind of need part 1.
Yes, a part 1 believer. Here we go.
Yeah, no, it's not my favorite part. I don't think it's necessary if you go through a rewatch to watch part 1 again.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone should watch part 1. So my introduction to JoJo was part 3, with Jotaro, but I was something's not hitting right about it. So then
you need part 1 to watch part 3.
Yeah, so a lot of the context of, even though you can watch it by itself, it's there's some context I feel you miss. So when going back,
you kind of need part 1 to fully appreciate part 3, but you don't need part 1 to fully appreciate part 2. You can appreciate part 4 by itself. But it's kind of funnier if you watch part 2 before it. And part 5 and 6, you kind of need 1 and 3. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned before, we're following an entire family and their lineage throughout decades.
It is a saga.
Centuries by the time we get to part 6, 7, and 8. And I think it's imperative to watch part 1 to understand the start of the Joestar lineage, and
or you can just skip to Speedball Run when that starts airing in America.
Yeah. But Jonathan Joestar lays the foundation of what a Joestar man, and eventually the one girl Joestar, Jolene, is. And there's a lot of really interesting deconstruction of what a shonen protagonist should be like. And he gets really weird with it, because even though it's this very hyper masculine, violent manga, there is this gothic air of introducing Dracula and the supernatural with vampires, where Jonathan is this very reserved, sympathetic, sensitive British boy, and I think that puts people off, because even though he's ripped and he's jacked, he's not a brawler, and he only fights when it's to defend the honor of his girlfriend or his family. So it's these very masculine ideas, but there isn't a lot of display of toxic masculinity that I think shonen has a lot of. So I think it kind of disconnects people expecting that out of the genre. But I think it's important, because it lays the foundation of where how it's possible, to go, because you see where it starts, and then as you
it goes hyper masculine to not hyper masculine. They just have everyone has natural lipstick.
Yeah, like buff absolute units to twunk to twinks.
It's not wrong.
It's really not, and I'm like so about it though. Like I kind of love it.
But also, it's funny because the buff absolute units are the most stylish ones because they have some outfits.
Yeah, and belts, lots of belts.
Yes, that is true, and hats. I have a lot of hats.
But I recognize that everyone's like super down with like vampires that like suck blood out of their fingers. Like I get it. It's weird. It's odd. So my
I don't know. If you watched the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s, you're kind of used to that with Morbius.
I've never seen that. Well, that's kind of funny.
Young people.
I know. But if it's really not your vibe and you're like, man, like this isn't like what I want or what I'm like expecting, and you still want to try, I always tell people to go straight to 4 then, because I think 4 is the most accessible. Our protagonists are like pretty normal high schoolers who have like really like approachable like goals in life. Like they're just like want to have a good time. They just want to have friends. They just want to go on adventures in their like small town. But what I love about it is that like everyone loves a good like small town like murder mystery. And
it is probably it's my favorite. I know that much. Like it feels a lot more lore rich than any of the other ones because it's set in that one town, which is probably why it comes back in JoJo Leon.
Yeah, I think like what you mentioned, that one town, it feels very cozy, and it reminds me a lot about like everything I love about like Twin Peaks, where it's like one town, these set of like teenagers that have like really like silly teenager lives, but these like really weird, like overarching, like sinister lore and deception of like suburbia. And like, I think it blends all of that really well. So I think if you're not liking part 1, go to part 4, the best plot, in my opinion, the best protagonists. Or a lot of people started with part 5, and I think that's very valid. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good one to start with as well, because it doesn't, while it ties to everything else, I said it doesn't need, you need part 3, but you don't really, because who Giorno is, it kind of relies on that, but it doesn't dwell on it. There's only really one character you need to know. But anyway, let's put an end of the JoJo episode thing here, and go to the discussion section.
Yeah, we're gonna talk spoilers. So we're gonna get into it.
Yeah, we're gonna talk spoilers. So just imagine there's a little to be continued in the bottom corner of your brain as you hear us speak about things involving JoJo's.
Yeah, while the Roundabout by Yes is playing.
Yes. I recently saw the Family Guy's take on that to end an episode.
Oh, I'm not aware.
Oh, it was weird. But anyway, Hi,
it's Dan here. You may know me from podcasts such as this one. I'm not putting something fancy here in the middle. I just wanted you to hear Jake sing. He's going to say I'm going to put something maybe in. I didn't, because this made me laugh out loud at my desk as I was editing this, so it's staying in. So, thanks, Jake.
Do you want to get just into ranking your Joestars? Like, let's just get into it.
Discussion time. Dan will do something in the middle. I don't know, maybe. All right, so I want to note that I watched all of part 3 pretty much at night while I was home with COVID, and I was hallucinating at night. So I was thinking I was hallucinating about vampires.
It's kind of badass.
It's fun. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I probably should have gone to the hospital, but it's fine. Okay, so my favorite Joestars in order are Josuke, Joseph, Jolene, Jotaro, Giorno, and then Jonathan.
I need to ask, is it like young Joseph, old Joseph, or like
young Joseph?
Okay. I mean, I figured because that's usually the answer, but okay, word.
I mean, I don't hate old Joseph by any stretch of the imagination. But he's not the big trickster that he was.
Yeah, he's not in his prime
man.
anymore. I respect the list though. I think it's a good list.
Yeah, I mean, we only have a few differences.
Yeah, it's like we start and we end the same. Like Josuke is absolutely my favorite JoJo.
Oh, absolutely, he's the best.
But I need to preface my like Joestar list by saying that I am a Dio Brando stan. I am a Dio Brando apologist. I love Dio Brando. I love me just like a sick, vile little freak, and he's one of them. He's just so evil.
Christ comes into this. Christ actually does come into this. We'll talk about that.
And I love, he's just so extra with his evil. It's kind of like, I don't know, like, I think there's something very like admirable about the lengths that he goes to like terrorize his family, like for like nothing more than like his ego gets hurt.
He's my second favorite antagonist.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, so like take that with a grain of salt. It's like, I know we're in spoiler territory, but if you watch part 1, I like
Sid wants to be steamrolled.
Yeah, like the like connection that Dio has to the Joestars is just so like sick and weird that it's just like oh. But then my list goes Josuke, love him, sweet baby, Jolene, then Jotaro, Joseph, young Joseph, and then Giorno, and then Jonathan. So we actually have, I think the only like we only have 3 that are like not the same.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't help that Giorno and Jonathan kind of pale in comparison to the other characters in their parts.
Yeah,
they don't get to shine, whereas Joseph is pretty much the one who shines, and everyone else is his straight man to his wily trickster. Minus Straightso, but I'm not gonna talk nice about Straightso.
Yeah.
And then there's also wait, no. My thing
Are you talking about part 2?
I'm thinking of the wrong person. Straightso is the vampire monk.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's whatever. I don't.
Yeah, and part 2 has some weird.
I'm thinking
World War II stuff. It's not fun.
Yeah. What's his name? What's the Nazi's name? I'm not gonna stand
Stroheim.
Stroheim. That's why I got confused. The letter S.
Yeah. Pretend we do not see.
Yeah, I mean. Sure, Joseph gets a cool robot hand, but it's a Nazi robot hand.
It's like what was it, like that meme where it's just like moments before tragedy. Joseph gets a cool arm, but at what extent?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think okay. So those are our favorite Joestars. I think yes, Josuke. It's the sweetest boy. But I think in chronological order, we can kind of go through what it's like.
Let's do that.
So I, as an avid Phantom Blood stan and lover, even though it's not like my favorite part, I will rewatch Phantom Blood, which I know a lot of people don't want to do that. I really like where it all starts. I'm a giant like Dracula fan, so I think like Araki's depictions of vampires is really, really interesting, and I like the like Victorian Gothic like vibes of, you know, the exploration of a city, the melodrama between Jonathan and his adopted brother Dio Brando, like the sort of like tug and pull of trying to be like honorable men to like a dignified family. Like I do like those like out like plot points. I think that Jonathan is a sweet good boy. I don't think he's ever done anything wrong in his entire life. And I love that he just wants to be someone who is honorable and someone who is like the protector of family, because that core idea is something that is like perpetuated throughout the rest of the Joestars, that it like starts with him being like a man of dignity, but not because he is like inherently stronger than someone else, but because his will is strong enough to like shield his loved ones from like whatever is perceived as evil. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate. But I do think that Phantom Blood is ridiculous and it's funny. And it's
very over the top, especially with the way it's voice acted in the
yeah.
anime. I think Jonathan's a bit of a dweeb. But that's also why he gets rebooted into Johnny Joestar, super. I get he kind of depressive, and a little homicidal, I guess.
Yeah, it is kind of funny, like how everything gets kind of like turned on its head.
But also, it's wild how like physically different they are by the end. Like, I mean, the premise of Speedball Run being Johnny being a paraplegic who's trying to get the use of his legs back. But
that's neither here.
One,
yeah,
not part.
That's neither here nor there right now.
Part 7.
But Phantom Blood, with that over the top stuff, like it has like a lot of really intense like violence. That kind of so I watched the anime. I went back and read the manga, and I straight up when I saw that dog being burned alive, I was like, I'm not reading this anymore. I was like, no excuse. Bye. I was like, that's ridiculous. But then someone.
Yeah, it must make you hurt to be a Dio apologist.
Yeah. But then I like
R.I.P. Danny.
Rip a real one. But then I like someone had told me that like they're like, oh, you should like find out why like Araki like writes so much animal violence in JoJo, which like for people who don't know or like want to be warned, there's like a lot of like animal violence. But I found out why. And Araki in an interview was like, I think the most evil thing a person can do is harm like an animal or like harm specifically a dog. So like he's just kind of.
Yeah, that's something you kind of do see a good bit in anime.
Yeah, so like
there's always that gang of kids who beats up a puppy that's a little boy is taken care of under like an overpass.
Yeah, so like the animal abuse and violence we witness in JoJo is literally because Araki's just a bad writer, and he's like, the only way I could show that people are really evil is like if they hurt a dog, which I think is kind of hilarious though. Where it's just like that's a little silly.
He makes there's that, and there's also the fact that he forces himself on Arena.
Yeah, I mean Dio does a lot of really terrible things.
Yeah.
Like poisoning his
Granted,
father.
Just to jump quickly to part 2, it's weird that Joseph also threatens to make out with people.
Yeah, but that's because Joseph is a misogynist.
Granted, it's him. Yeah, he's a misogynist. But then again, it was the 9th. It was, that time.
We got a Joseph apologist in the chat. Amazing.
No, that's just bad though.
Yeah. One of my favorite jokes one of my friends makes.
But also he hates cops, which is that's my apology.
Yeah, it's the good and the bad. One of my favorite jokes that one of my friends makes about Joseph, where it's just like Joseph would be like a feminist if he knew like it would get more girls, and like that's like all you need to know about Joseph Joestar within part 2, which I think we could just go like straight into part 2 now. Is that Joseph is he's a little silly boy.
I mean, he's a trickster where everyone else he's the comic relief and everyone is the straight man. And I think it works really well, especially with how short it is. Like, you couldn't carry that on for the length of one of the other parts.
No, I completely agree. It's very fun. I love the New York setting. I like seeing young Joseph be brash and just this rebellious sort of like adventurer. Like, I love the Indiana Jones pulp aspect of part 2, which is so different in tone and in theme.
I'm a big pulp person, so I loved it.
Yeah, it's like it really draws you in, and I think it's one of because Phantom Lit is very isolated between like Jonathan and Dio. Like, it's very like good versus evil, like nature versus nurture. It's like these very basic universal concepts of like morality. Whereas like part 2, you're just like you're with a man who is like going to like shoot up a diner if you like look at him wrong.
I mean, he has crashed how many planes?
Too many to count. I can think of like at least 3 instances off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And not only do we see that like departure from these like very basic themes, because we have like these really interesting like rejections of shonen like masculinity and like male sensitivity and like male friendship and like familial bonding and found family and, you know, like male sadness are all things that are like integrated into this really fast-paced story that is battle tendency, while also introducing like the forays of Araki's like a quote unquote like magic system, power system, however people want to call it.
Yeah, because Hamon is really more fleshed out in like what it can do, but like I think when Caesar comes in and he's got the bubbles, that's where it's completely different.
Yeah. One thing I think that is so...
Because it was just kind of a breathing thing in Phantom Blood, which is kind of like any like cheeky spirit thing that you see in anime.
But, you go, sorry.
The only thing No, I think the only thing that's similar to how it is in part 2, it would be like Hunter x Hunter. Because like everyone has their own thing. But then there's stands.
Yeah.
That's different. That's where it completely says, "Oh no, we're our own thing."
Yeah, well, I do like that the Hamon like system is like kind of like the foundation of that, because it's like you've got like power coming from the sun, and that's sort of supernatural, but a lot of it is tied to like the internal like personality of its user. And
yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's the original like translation was like ghost ripple.
Yeah,
which is like because Hamon is ripple. So it tied in, but like they kind of do away with that in the anime, which I think is kind of, it has its drawbacks, but it's kind of smart.
Yeah, I think it makes it a lot more uniform to like introduce stands, and like there's when you look at JoJo as like a holistic thing, when you start to compare characters and their abilities and like the different types of systems they use, like all of a sudden it doesn't really make sense. And I think that's just because Araki is much more occupied with something looking cool rather than it making sense. Like he could he doesn't care about his own canon.
He's obsessed with making Joseph have the cool best red coat.
And he needs
with the roll.
Yeah, he looks like a greaser. I think it's hilarious because he's got like this like big old, like it's not like a pompadour, but it's like a big old flashy hair.
Yeah, it is very big. I
think that exploration is really interesting because and even in like a lot of shonen now, that sort of like power system or like where people are getting like their magic or whatever, it still is like this separate like realm and force and entity. Like I think of like current things like Jujutsu Kaisen or like Chainsaw Man that are really popular now and like are doing really interesting things.
Yeah, you can draw it all back
shonen,
to this.
And it's like that sort of like internal struggle. Like you could start to see where like how JoJo kind of like sets the tone for that and like really, really explores it. That kind of like paves the way for like how people interact with that those systems of fighting like now. And I think that's like really cool because like historically speaking, JoJo has been around since like the late 80s. So it's like it's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's also one of those things where like even between the parts, like there's not like a power scaling thing. Like people aren't getting stronger. Like you can develop your own abilities to be better, but like half of what comes out of like Stardust Crusaders is like you have to like use your abilities in a certain way and like creative ways. I think that's a great aspect of how these characters work. Like Joseph in part 2, like, yeah, he doesn't really know too much about Hamon going in. He knows he has it, and he just kind of uses it innately. But like, he breaks a cop's finger with a bottle cap with his first ever Coca-Cola.
Yeah, like it's really fascinating that it's such an internal thing, and it's like represents like the person wielding that power, and it's like it's about like the like the art of fighting, where it's like what I love about Joseph and like how silly and absurd he is. A lot of that comes out with like how he wins his fights, and a lot of that is like by trickery, by being mischievous.
Yeah, and I mean, he literally picks like when he's developing his own Hamon technique, he literally picks a toy as his weapon.
Yeah, so these really ridiculous concepts, which like I think about like stuff like, you know, like Dragon Ball or you know, like Berserk or stuff like that, where it's very rooted in like being strong and powerful for the sake of like being like, the most.
There's that wide power scale type thing, which this doesn't really have all that much of. Like, yeah, sure, there are some abilities that are just inherently more powerful, like the world.
Yeah, but if you're not a respected fighter, which is why I love like the Pillar Men so much, and I love that conflict, because it's all about like, oh, well, you have bested me like in battle. Why don't we duel to the death like in a month, and we will see who is truly like deserving of the title of like best fighter. And like, even though like that's such a shonen thing, the way that it is about, it's not like Goku being like, I want to be the best fighter because that's like my entire purpose. It's like,
yeah, there's like a realistic drive there for Joseph. I mean, he's trying to save the world, but he's also trying to like help those around him.
Yeah, and then I love Caesar.
He's a trickster, but he's got a heart of gold.
Very, very Harrison Ford of him. I think that's a great way we could transition into talking about part 3, which is Stardust Crusaders, and I've got some opinions about Stardust Crusaders. Do you want to go first, or should I?
I mean, I'm seeing what you said, and I kind of agree. It's not my favorite part. It's definitely not my favorite part. I think at times it drags itself out a little too long. Like especially when they get to Egypt. Like once they get past like the main like 10 enemies, and then there's another batch of them.
It took me 2.5 or maybe 3 years to like really, really push through like Stardust Crusaders. It took me a really long time because I couldn't like stand it, like, which is like ironic because like stands are introduced in part 3, but it is very long.
I don't think they're all that fleshed out until about 4, when they start becoming really weird and like personalized. I mean, I think the person who has Jonathan Permit Purple is a cool one, but I don't really associate with that with like, oh, that has something to do with Joseph's personality. Like it's weird that him, Jonathan, and Holly have like vine-based ones, but like Whole Horse. The Emperor is very much like a part of who he is. Like, it's a gun.
Yeah. But that's what it was like, where I do have to give my kudos to Stardust Crusaders, because we're introduced to it with like, I think it's like one of the most like hilarious like intros to a part where it's like Jotaro's in a jail cell and he's just like, there is something wrong with me. And he's like this 17-year-old, like stoic, beefy boy, like very like boncho.
Yeah, I'm glad you had the same thought process of he is stoic.
Mm-hmm.
He's also smoking.
Yeah, like, and he's just a very rebellious, like boncho character, like, you know, like evoking those sort of like genre, like rebellious schoolboy sort of vibes. Like, and like he has this stand that is like a ghost. That's Star Platinum, and he's like bringing things to like Jotaro in jail, and he's like, this is the devil's work or something along those lines.
He keeps bringing me nice
He's
shit.
like, there is something wrong with me, and like never asks his mom for help at all, and he calls his mom like a bitch, and like it's just like so,
like, she has such fond memories of him being like really loving and caring towards him,
like
her, and like he goes, oh, you're a bitch. I'm like,
and you know, like we're introduced to this part like through this like 17-year-old boy who's just like kind of like the worst.
yeah, but he's also like, she's so accepting of how mean.
Yeah, like she just goes
and
with
Joseph is having Joseph, the misogynist, is like not having any.
No,
of it.
he's like, you gotta respect women so that you can disrespect them in a different way.
Yeah, like cheat on them.
And it's like kind of weird to like get introduced to this like epic, like worldly adventure across like the entirety of Egypt to get to like the big baddie, because like it's so like it just feels like Araki was like, I'm gonna have this character and he's gonna go on an adventure, but I don't know what that adventure is, and I'm gonna like figure it out. And like and
then there's so many enemies. Like one of the like that's kind of indicative of how unmemorable some of them are is so many of them are not in that all-star battle game. Like only really Whole Horse, the bird, whose name I forget. I mean, it's just a bird. It's a falcon. Dio and Cool Ice.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice, actually. I wish they didn't change these names for copyright reasons.
I do think it's kind of funny though, but yeah, no, you're right, where it's like we don't have like this slate of really interesting villains. We do have these really interesting characters and character dynamics, because Jotaro has to like assemble a team with Joseph to go defeat.
Yeah, I mean, this is really where you start seeing the Joestar team.
You know, and like they're like, okay, this like literal evil demon vampire man has been haunting our family, and he's like coming for us again. So like we gotta beat him up. And I do love the dynamics that we experience with Kakyoin, Polnareff, Avdol, and Joseph and Jotaro.
Kakyoin, the who in every single Joestar family tree, I see him as MILF Hunter.
Yes. The cool MILF Hunter with the sunglasses. And so I do respect that, even though it's like a trek to get through, like literally and like figuratively, that
it drags itself out a little too long.
I respect the grind for him to like experiment with form. We start to see a little bit of art shifting. We get to see the introduction of more characters. We get to like experience Araki trying to figure out what he wants JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to be.
I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways is the not straightforward battles that begin in this. Like the video games, the yes, the think, just that was actually the first episode I ever saw, and I think it was just at my grandmother's house one day, just watching the Funimation channel, and that came on. I was like, I don't know what's going on. He's just saying yes in his head. So that was a good place to start.
Yeah, and I love the basic idea and concept of stands, like where it's like they are a supernatural manifestation of like a person's fighting will. Do I think it's misogynistic that Holly for some reason can't really develop a stand because she doesn't have fighting will? Yeah, but on the other hand, I do think it's pretty cool that Jotaro has Star Platinum, which is just this big buff purple guy. That
how many of the women in Stardust Crusaders had
I think it's like only one other woman, and that's the one that like Joseph and Avdol like miraculously fall into like her boobs.
Oh yeah,
I think that's like the only one. I can't think of if there. I could be wrong, but like that's the only like female stand user I like distinctly remember from part 3.
Yeah, I don't really remember many of the characters from part 3 other than the core team and the bird.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I also, I do shed a tear thinking about like the ending of Stardust Crusaders. I think
R.I.P.
Yeah, like oof, rip real one. Where he's definitely, or Rocky's definitely.
Iggy's a dog, by the
way. He's definitely like playing with like tropes, genre, and emotion, and I think that like kind of culminates into like why Diamond is Unbreakable is one, so many people's favorites, and two, why it's like such a standout in like the entire like lineage of Joestars.
Mm-hmm. I just love. Okay, we're going to Stardust Diamond is Unbreakable now. Okay, so I love Morio. Just looking at it is pleasing. The sky is always yellow. Half of the background is always purple until you get like close to a building, and then it's all fleshed out. But like the background is purple and yellow. It's like they work well together, but it's kind of unnatural feeling. And then like you get like, oh, these landmarks, like the Rock. You learn about Morio's most dangerous serial killer. You go into a haunted house from a man whose son is the current serial killer going around town killing women and cutting off their hands because he has a hand fetish.
Yikes.
Kira's actually a great villain.
Yes,
though.
no, I do love me Mr. David Bowie Kira, like Yoshikage Kira.
Weird thing about All-Star Battle, he gets 2 characters.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you've seen it, but like, could have just been an
yeah, I love what you say about like how it's so appealing with its like yellow sky and its purple backgrounds, and it has such this like I really love the coziness of it. But yeah, it's
got a great atmosphere. Yeah, like it feels lived in,
and there is that like that tinge of like something is not quite right here, which is something I personally like love in any form of media. Like I love Twin Peaks.
It's really where that bizarre aspect really starts to shine.
Kicks up and ramps up. Like it reminds me of like stuff like Twin Peaks, like Gravity Falls, like Over the Garden Wall, where it's like you take these really cozy atmospheres and you just kind of like explore what about it could possibly be evil. And I love that, like, yes, the evil is relegated to like a person that is Yoshikage Kira, but the evil is about like the secrets of a town that like people like ignore. And I think that is what makes like Diamond Unbreakable so communal and so like powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it also highlights that aspect of, the villains in JoJo are kind of like not what you're thinking of as villains, and the heroes are like delinquents and criminals. And then, I mean, Dio, maybe he's a vampire, but he's also a lawyer. The Pillar Men are kind of like rulers of their society and all of that. And then, once again, Dio is a lawyer. Yoshikage Kira is a salary man. He's a 9-to-5 guy who just is weird about hands.
Yeah, he wants to live a normal life, except he wants to cut off women's hands.
And his fingernails.
Yeah, and his fingernail stuff. Yeah, he's got some weird stuff with hands. But it's great.
I mean, he uses them as spoons.
It's great to like see the dichotomy of like such a weird antagonist because like as viewers like you like know immediately like who the villain is, but you get to see it through the lens of like these 16-year-olds. It's like, okay, my uncle Jotaro's in town. Weird. Apparently I have a dad who's older than my uncle. Weird. Like
No, Josuke is the
uncle. Yeah,
uncle.
Josuke is the uncle. Yeah. Like it's just like weird family dynamics and you're kind of like thrust into this.
Well, but also you kind of, he doesn't really deliberately say, it just more hints at it, but like, oh, Josuke is the way he is specifically because of the Dio incident. Because he was at death's door the same time Holly was. Because he had no fighting spirit against his stand. And he's saved by a delinquent who he idolizes and starts emulating as much as he knows how to. And he has his sick pompadour and he has his sick purple uniform. He just goes ham with, and the only thing he really cares about in life is his hair, his friends, his family, which is, it's a wild difference between Jotaro and him and the way he treats his mother. Like, he likes his mom.
He loves his mom. Oh my God. He'd die for his mommy.
Oh yeah.
Like,
and then he's even pretty accepting of Joseph when he finally meets him. Like I mean, Joseph is like in his 70s.
Senile.
Yeah, because he didn't use Hamon correctly. Like Straitzo, who like aged gracefully. And then, became a vampire.
But like alongside, like not only is Josuke like just such a great protagonist because he does have a heart of gold and he's like this delinquent that is like willing to like do anything for the people that he loves. He like there's also a great cast of like supporting members.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Koichi and Rohan.
Yeah.
Like they become kind of more important to the overall franchise than Josuke does, other than the fact that Josuke. His name is reused in part 8.
We can't forget about my man's Okuyasu. That's my boy. I love him.
He doesn't get the respect
he deserves.
The
hand, arguably, probably the most powerful stand. But like, it's kind of insane to me that we never really get to see more of the hand because like Okuyasu as a character just like doesn't care about what his stand can do. He's just like, it does what I need it to do. And I don't know. I don't need to know more about that.
He's not creative enough to play with.
And I kind of love that about Araki, that he keeps like characters and their stands. Like now it's very like solid. Like they are manifestations of like them. So like Okuyasu is lazy. And as long as he's like, chill and okay because of the way that he was raised with like a really destabilizing home life and really, really tragic backstory with his father and his brother.
Yeah, his I don't even know how I'd categorize his father.
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
A little imp.
Yeah, it's a little
troll.
Yeah, I don't really know. He just turns into like this creature, and so it makes sense that Okuyasu is content with like, I'm alive. I have friends and I have some place to sleep. So I don't really care what's happening to the things.
And they're while they can be like scummy at times and like mischievous, they all kind of have a heart of gold, like all of them together. Like no one has like bad intents. Granted, Josuke wants money, but like he's a teenage boy. Of course he wants money. Granted, he gets his bank account frozen.
Yeah.
Because his mom ain't playing no games with him.
I will say something controversial.
Go ahead.
I don't like Rohan. Ooh.
No, you don't have to. You're not supposed to.
I don't like him. I
You're-
hate Rohan. Why did he like he liked a spider? Like, he's gross. Why are you Rohan?
He's that character you love to hate.
Yeah. Why are you Rohan? Like, fighting with a 16-year-old. Why are you willing to set your house on fire for a card? Like, you're the most ridiculous man. And I was like, I love that people talk about like Rohan as being
the man bought a mountain range so a developer couldn't ruin his research for a story.
Just like the most ridiculous, the most fashionable, but like also like has like the biggest like character turnaround in part 4, which I think like, even though I love to hate on Rohan, the way that
he becomes very central to the core plot of the Kira mystery.
Yeah, and it's like slow and it's methodical and it's really well done, where it's like I said, like it's like all of these characters have really great dynamics, and like Araki is very focused on like fleshing out characters. And then like from here on out, for the most part, like it is something that I think is why like part 4, part 5, part 6 like stand out to people so much more than like the first half of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because it's like here we see the blend of fashion, the blend of characterization, the blend of plot like at its best.
So there's one of the other things about Diamond is Unbreakable, there's really only one real character that dies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember his name, but he's got he explodes. He's like a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah, it's actually really. I don't like. Can I say his name? I don't like Shigechi because he's kind of like an annoying 12-year-old. But like that's like he's supposed to be that, and like he's and
that's what he is. I just forgot his name.
But it's like actually really tragic because it's like even though like you spend time with these very realistically fleshed out like teenagers and like young adults, that it's like even though you're like okay they're like obsessed with like collecting coins and like trying to figure out how to get like their favorite sandwich from like the local like sandwich shop, it's like okay, but then when this 12-year-old dies it's like really sad because it's like okay, like the evil that is perpetuated in Morio is something that like harms their community.
Yeah, and that he's really the only one. You Okuyasu almost dies, but he doesn't. Whereas only in part 3 and 5,
like everyone's dying.
Everyone's dying in that. Like, only 2 people ever really actually make it out of. Other than Joseph, but you can't kill Joseph. He's got to make it out of everything. So you get 3 survivors out of, I guess, the 6 of them in Stardust Crusaders, and you only get 2 survivors. Well, I guess 3 survivors, but one of them leaves the fucking group because he doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, part 4 definitely has the happiest ending.
Yeah, and it gives a lot of time to its characters. Like, each of them kind of gets fleshed out. They have their own desires and goals and stuff.
And then we have Golden Wind, which I feel...
Hey, you get Polnareff.
Yeah, we have Polnareff again. We get Koichi and Jotaro again. I have really complicated... Like, from here on out, I have... just between part 5 and part 6, I have, like, really weird feelings about, like, Golden Wind and Stone Ocean, even though, like, I really, really love them. I feel like
they're following after the best part.
It is hard to like watch something like Diamond is Unbreakable, where like there's so much care and attention to fleshing out these characters and their experiences and building like a sense of like community with them. And then you get Giorno, who right out of the gate we find out is like Dio Brando's son, and that does not matter, and that bothers me.
He also has one of Joseph's Hermit Purple photos.
Yeah, it's just like right off the gate, like Jotaro's like Koichi, Dio Brando's son is a threat to us. Maybe go to Italy, figure it out. And it's like, okay, cool. We have Jodor, we got Koichi. Like, this is so interesting. Like, we're going to be exploring like more of Joestar lore, but like we don't. And it's like the first 2 episodes, and like Koichi's like, Giorno seems like a good kid. And like that's it.
Yeah, it's kinda like Dio matters just as much as George Joestar the second.
Yeah. It feels like this really weird, just like passive thing. Like Araki was like, this would be interesting. Except nothing happens about it, and that bothers me.
Yeah. He's also the only he's in Italy, but he's not Italian.
And
Jotaro is technically Italian. Yeah.
But what is interesting about Golden Wind is that every other character is so cool.
Oh, they're wonderful. I need to talk about the best scene in the series. The best scene. The boat dance torture scene. So Narancia, Fugo, and Mista catch a guy. They start torturing him after his like head is like removed, and he's got his eye is held open with a fish hook. And they take a magnifying glass and they start just having the light go into his cheek, and then they start dancing. They turn on music and they just start dancing, and then they just kind of taunt him. It was the best thing. And then there's also the time they just kicked the shit out of somebody in a restaurant.
Yeah, like in it, like
oh my god,
like outside of the restaurant. Yeah, well, like the torture dance scene is like iconic, but like for so many reasons. So like one thing I briefly mentioned when we were talking about like introducing like JoJo in general is like David Productions, and I feel like they are able to take and transform like manga like scenes and really be very masterful in how they interpret that on screen. Because like in the manga, it's literally just like decapitated guy on a hook, and like it's clear that like they're having fun torturing this guy because like it's a mob story. So like there is that sort of like The Sopranos, like there is a sick enjoyment out of like being powerful and exerting that power over people.
It's very much a horse in the bed situation. But they take it a step further of just like, let's party.
Yeah, but then when you witness this scene, it's this very like abstract art house sort of like depiction of like the enjoyment of like torturing someone is like through the medium of dance. And you get this really cool like trip hop track in the background and these like really flashing bright like colors with like shifting in like animation styles. And it's just like so cool. And I think Golden Wind is like an accumulation of like David Pro finally like knowing exactly how to work with Araki and like get everything on screen to be just so beautiful. Like Golden Wind is like gorgeous to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the only real problems are like Giorno doesn't have much of a character arc. I mean, Abacchio is kind of gets a character arc and then just dies, and then Fugo is
a weird guy, a weirdo.
He's just there. Which, here's the thing about, I mentioned All-Star Battle twice already, but Abacchio is not playable. Fugo is.
It is weird. I agree.
Because Fugo is never in a real fight.
Fugo is just, he's just kind of there. I don't know. I think it maybe in the beginning, but I think he very quickly ditches. He's like, I don't want to be a part of this fight.
Yeah, once they start going against, what's his name? I'm trying to remember the villain's name.
Diavolo.
Diavolo. Oh yeah. Once they go against the boss, he's just like, nah, I'm with Diavolo on this, but I'm not gonna fight you. Yeah. Oh, I completely forgot Narancia's illiterate.
Yeah. Did I write? I fit. Yeah. Right.
He's got his little plane, but he can't.
I love him. I love him. I love my sweet little orange boy.
Oh, he's my favorite.
Stacked cast. Giorno, love you. Sweet that you're Dio's son. Wish it meant something because it kind of really, I think, cheapens like I think it cheapens Giorno as a character because it's like without him being Dio's son, he's kind of like useless. Like there's no real purpose to him.
Yeah, it's the whole nature versus nurture type thing.
But it's just not fleshed out well enough. I think Araki thought he was.
It's not a great concept of a nature versus nurture because he is. I mean, on a biological level. At that, Dio Brando and Dio are kind of different entities because Dio is Dio Brando's head on Jonathan Joestar's body. So Giorno's more. I mean, he's got the symbol. He's got the birthmark. So I mean, he's more like on a personal level. He's more like Jonathan, but like a perverted version of
Jonathan. But then you have Abakio, this like dirty cop whose partner like died in like this like terrible way, and he's like, I'm gonna be an alcoholic now, and I'm gonna leave the force, and I'm going to be a gangster. And then you have Bruno, who is like just like twink dad who just collects like every sad little person in Italy, like who has no.
He is a twink dad.
You know, he like adopts all of these like.
With his zippers.
Yeah, with his zippers, the sticky fingers.
And then he becomes a zombie.
Yeah, okay, that's whack. I like kind of forgot about that until you brought it up.
Yeah, he becomes a zombie.
Yeah, but Narancia, a 17-year-old illiterate boy who thinks, what was it like? He thinks that like 6 times, like, he knows that 6 times 5 is like 30, but he thinks that like 6 times like 15 is like 28. I'm pretty sure that's like exactly the joke, like in the thing where it's like he doesn't know anything, but he has like the heart of a fighter. And then you have Mista, who is also like just such a dummy, but they have like the best outfits. I think they have like my favorite outfits and all of it. And you have this very classic like hierarchical mob story with all of these like interesting characters. And I kind of like the like misfit, like sort of like we're going to turn our back against the gang. I do think it's weird that there's like a really strong like I'm going to fight the mob boss because I don't want children on the street to have drugs. I do think there's a little like it's like you draw the like it's like Araki, you draw the line at like drugs on the street, but violence against women and dogs and weird like sexual monkeys.
I mean, this is kind of the orangutan.
Yeah, it's like this seems a little odd to me, Araki. But you know what? Good for you. Yeah, I don't know. I think Golden Wind is just such a like weird amalgamation of things.
Yeah, I mean, you get Trish, but she's not as useful as she could be. But she still gets more of a character arc than Giorno.
But I do think that the villain of Golden Wind really, really stands out because he's layered. There's like this like dual split personality thing going on, which I think is like really, really cool to like unravel and see played out. I think there's like I like the ominous.
Hello, boss.
Yeah, I like the ominous, like each villain that they fight is a little spread out. And it's like because like you're like kind of like working through the ranks. I love
that his silhouette was like the standard. For the most of the time, he's just a silhouette of like a standard Italian mob boss. And then it's no, this guy is wearing like fishnets. And that's his thing.
Yeah, just like crop tops. He looks like a goth. Long pink hair.
Yeah, he's got the spider web mesh with the studded pants around the crotch.
Yeah,
and like it's like a tailcoat too. Like it's like a weird goth doily.
I also think that like for me, like Golden Wind has a really, really special place in my heart because I watched a majority of it like live as it was coming out. And I was like on Twitter, like to see like them tweeting like live and like to have that sense of community like amongst the JoJo fandom was really, really, really cool and interesting to see everyone like memeing at the same time, to see like, I mean, like DiGiorno Pizza made like a bunch of Giorno memes.
Yeah.
That was like hilarious. When we talk about Stone Ocean, I feel very strongly about a lot of things about Stone Ocean. And one of the things is that I think that Jolene is like severely mistreated.
Oh yeah. Before we start going forward, I want to step back to Diamond is Unbreakable, and because we forgot to mention that it had a live action.
Oh yeah,
film.
and it like rocks. It's so good.
I haven't seen it,
It's
but
good.
they went hard on those designs.
Yeah, I recommend. I think you can buy a physical copy of it through Viz Media. Like, I'm pretty sure you can, or at least you used to be able to. But I also think you can rent it from like certain streaming services.
I'll check Amazon.
So it's like I love Golden Wind, but I do think like you said, like there's just some weird stuff that kind of renders it, like even though it has so many good things.
I do think it's got a good plot though.
It's just weird. But when we get to Stone Ocean, I feel even more conflicted about Stone Ocean than I do about.
I don't like the beginning of Stone Ocean at all. I do like Jolene, but like I don't like one of like I was looking online, I'm like, what are like people have like big feelings about this part, like it's just too weird at times. I think it kind of reels itself back in towards the later half, and like I also think her power of, because I mean using the string to hear is completely underutilized in the later part of the story, because I mean her power is literally the ear hustle. Like listening to people and like learning information. Like she should have been able to find out who Poochie was that way, and not like FF.
How do I even start with Jolene? I know from interviews Araki has been like, yeah, like I wanted to write like a female JoJo because I'd never been able to, because the Shonen Jump was like, no, like you're going to lose viewership, you're going to lose readers, and like it's too big.
I think it's
too big of a risk to like have Jolene be the main character, because like not only did he want like Jolene to be the main character, but he like wanted an all women's prison, which he got sort of. Yeah, and he wanted an all female cast, and he wanted Jolene to be gay, which makes sense.
That I didn't know. That makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense with like the way certain things are written, and it makes sense that like he wanted to explore that with Jolene, but Shonen Jump was like, you can't, don't.
Yeah.
Which is why we see just one of the characters just like straight up, they just like in one chapter they are a girl, and the next chapter they are a man. Like it is just that quick.
Yeah.
Editorial was like, you can't do that. You can't have it.
Anastasia.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, trans men rep.
And then
here we go.
And then he was like, yeah, no, it was just supposed to be androgynous. I do like Anastasia.
And it's like Jolene is our first female JoJo, so I feel like she holds a lot of like people are expecting or wanting her to be treated no different than any other Joestar.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, she's probably the crudest JoJo at the beginning. Like yeah, no, women aren't just like these like delicate flowers. Like, no, they can be crude. They can be, you know, like just like everybody else. I mean, all like men aren't just the crude ones. Women do it too. That's just a thing.
Yeah, I love that she's like very like in charge of her like sexuality. I like that she doesn't like, she's not afraid of like her body. She's not afraid to be
masturbating in prison.
Queen.
Giving a show while she's getting her prison uniform.
Like she's serving.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, she has a very androgynous body. Like, she's not really, like, she's over sexualized in the sense that, like, Jolene wants to be sexy, not because Araki is like, we should view Jolene through the male gaze. He's like, no, Jolene is just like a crude, raunchy girl. And I think it makes sense because she's Jotaro's daughter, who Jotaro's like this like really stoic.
Because he's out of. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about how flamboyant and gay JoJo can be, but then you look at Jotaro, who he starts like dressing kind of embellished, but like it's always subdued in like masculinity for him. Even when he starts like wearing like the most of a flamboyant he dresses is still like super masculine. And that's what he wears in Stone Ocean with the snake pants,
snake boots,
the purple snake boots, the snake belt, the purple leather jacket. Yeah. But it's like it is. He's a 40-year-old man at this point. He's wearing straight up street.
Yeah, but there's
like American street.
But there's something so like unresponsive and cold about Jotaro. But I think I think Jolene really has a lot of the best traits of Jotaro, because like Jotaro in his youth was very feisty. He had a tongue. Like, he wasn't afraid to like say things. Like, he wasn't really afraid to just like go all out and fight, you know, like, you clearly a misogynist and stuff like that. But then like you have Jolene, and she's like incredibly protective, incredibly fierce. Like, she's ready to fight. She's ready to like scratch someone's eyes out, you know, and she's very strong because she is willing to do anything for like a romantic partner who doesn't like feel anything, doesn't feel the same way about her, and just views her as trash because like, she comes from this really broken, like divorced house where like she has an unresponsive father because Jotaro's not a good dad.
Yeah, because he's always in Japan.
Yeah, he's always doing whatever.
Dealing with going to Japan, helping his uncle, going to Japan to tell Koichi to go to Italy so he doesn't have to go to Italy.
You know, and it's like, okay, so we have her, and she's in prison, and then her father shows up and is just like, I think someone's out to get us. And it's like, okay, we're returning to these themes of lineage that I think Araki felt like he missed. He felt like he just didn't do enough of it with Giorno, because Giorno, like you said, it's like these ideas of nature versus nurture. It's like, just because Giorno is the son of like the embodiment of evil, it doesn't mean that like he needs to be evil himself, but it's just not fleshed out well enough. So then we have Jolene, who's like, I need to fight the entity of evil that continues to like haunt our family line. And it's up to me to not only save that line, but to like also save my father and like to rectify that relationship. And I hate it.
It doesn't help that the bad guy is Pucci, who is a priest who, God, I genuinely hate white snake, pale snake.
He's creepy.
As a concept. It's literally jizz based. The white goo, it's disgusting.
It's gross.
It's weird. Then there's like the disc thing is cool, and then it's but he opens it with like, oh yeah, let's do the hallucinogenic slime.
Like, ew, weirdo alert. Yeah,
it doesn't help that he's a priest.
Plus we have these ties to Dio because like Pucci is like an ex-lover, an ex-follower of Dio Brando. So it's like, okay, we have all of these big themes of like religion and following in the steps of like your father, like not repeating the sins of the past. But then we have a Joestar who fails. Like I feel like that's so whack to me that we have our first female JoJo. We have like this return to like epic family saga, and it's
I think it's a the one thing about her being the first female JoJo is, I mean, it is Pucci's role as a priest is actually a pretty good fit for the first female JoJo. I just don't like it in the context of a prison. I didn't really like the prison being so long. Like I wish they had broken out before when Jotaro comes in. But like, a priest is a massive symbolic patriarchal figure. I mean, they're literally called father. So I think that's a good contrast of the roles. But like, I don't think it's all that well executed.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is like there's these such big themes and these big ideas, and it like falls flat on its face because it feels really weirdly regressive. That it's like you build all of this up, you have Jolene follow in Jotaro's footsteps, and like the only way to save their lineage is by destroying it. Like I think that's like very like contradictory to like everything about like the Joestar family, because like I feel like the central theme is always like the Joestars prevail, and it's like we have our first girl and she fails
because she's not the winner.
Yeah, she's not. This is the first time.
And Emporio is the little boy in his little Cubs uniform is the big damn hero after he beats Super Pucci, who remakes the universe, and then they remakes it again. So that kind of means like Emporio is the only one still around. But yeah, and then it resets the universe, and then we get speed.
Yeah, and it's just weird, and it's also odd to me. It's like I find it so strange that like, of course, during like like the release of Stone Ocean, which a lot of people like have the same kind of qualms that I do, where it's like, it feels just like sad that like Jolene doesn't get to have her happy ending, like all of the other, like all of her predecessors, and that like, it feels kind of sexist to be like, she wasn't strong enough to beat the baddies, like to a degree. Like it feels just like strange, like a strange choice. Not that like Araki owes anything to us as like consumers. It's just like, okay, like there's a very clear like central theme following their heritage. So it's like, why did you write it so that she doesn't follow in line with like her heritage? Yeah. Because like the Joestars that come after her, they still win. She's the only one that fails. I mean, JoJolion isn't done, so like I don't know how that happens.
No, JoJolion ended.
Oh, did it?
Year.
Oh, I thought it was still going.
Yes. No, it's ended in 2021. He's currently on a break for what is currently tentatively known as JoJo for Part 9, which is probably going to be the last one.
And like, not only do we have like thematically, like that is what's going on, but then Netflix buys the rights to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and then takes away like those community JoJo Fridays, and then like it's dropped in batches and it's not advertised a lot. And like,
no, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I don't even think they really know when they're like, oh yeah, more new episodes coming soon. Like they posted that as soon as the second batch of episodes dropped on there, and then didn't say when it was coming out until maybe like sometime late last month. Like it's coming out it's coming out in December.
Yeah, I think you said December 1st.
Yeah, December 1st.
Yeah, and it's just...
And this episode comes out November 2nd. But so by the time that this comes out, I will be 27 years old. I am not 27 years old as we're recording this. I don't like being old.
It's just funny to me that it's like we have these issues presented within the text, and like, it seeps into its adaptation. And it's like, but also the treatment of Jolene as a character in the real world by the company that like owns the rights to her currently, like is also being mishandled. It's just like, wow, Jolene, like you deserve better.
I do think that the dropping it in batches is better than just like dropping it all at once. Like they could have just held it all at ransom. like they do with other shows. Like, oh yeah, we're to drop everything at the same time, so you binge it all, and then your community talks about it for a week. So at least like this way, there's like it's been dropped in like 3 batches, so you can have some conversations over time. But yeah, you're not getting that weekly conversation that you would be getting if it was dropping on like a regular schedule. Which is a shame.
It was a shame.
Because you don't see a lot. I don't see too much like people like talking about JoJo online that much anymore. Like used to see like so many videos like, oh yeah, there's a guy bowling and he's gonna make his friend do it.
Yeah. JoJo is really dominating in pop culture, and like that is a big draw and pool that like I kept seeing JoJo references, and I was like, what's this JoJo thing?
Is that a JoJo reference?
And it like, it really helps. And then, it's the accessibility thing. It like gets people into the fandom. And I think like if there's 1,010 toxic fandoms, but somehow like the JoJo Bizarre Adventure fandom, like it's just a bunch of like weirdos who love something weird. Like that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I haven't seen anybody like overtly creepy and negative about JoJo online. I mean, I'm not really an online community guy. I really haven't been in like a decade and a half. So I just enjoy these things on my own. If I see people talking about it, I'll join another conversation, but I don't need the community. But it is nice to know that the community isn't toxic, like say a My Hero Academia one, where all they do is bully the creator.
It just sucks that Stone Ocean kind of gets like its part in all of its cool stuff kind of gets like wrapped up into the like how people are perceiving it because of like how it's like, I don't know, it's just not given the treatment that like other parts of JoJo was. But or like same thing like the Spoke Rohan Kishibe that dropped like all at once. It was like what, like 6 episodes? Like I don't think there were 4 episodes. Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came in wet, even though like Rohan Kishibe is arguably like probably the most famous character of JoJo and like the moneymaker of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like the face of the franchise now.
Which is weird.
It's because he's the most fashionable and Araki loves him the most.
Oh, it's the earrings.
It's the earrings.
Earrings and headband.
And it just sucks that it's like Stone Ocean is this really, really great story about like, I don't know, trying to defy fate. But the fate is so tragic that it like renders a lot of it like useless in a way.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of ends up surviving the reset, but it's not the same.
Tragic. I'm inconsolable. Like, I'll never not be mad about Stone Ocean, like ever. I don't think.
Yeah, but I am super excited about Speedball Run and JoJolion eventually getting their anime adaptations. I mean, those ones are actually like some of the longest running ones. I don't know how many chapters are in each of them. I mean, JoJolion went 10 years, and then
that's crazy.
Yeah.
See, it's like like funny. I like actually don't really know like anything about Steel Ball Run or JoJolion. Like I know like characters, and I've like seen artwork and stuff like that. Like I know Steel Ball Run. There's like Funny Valentine, and there's like.
So I kind of ignored it until I started playing because I got a review copy of the
All-Star Battle
R, like the remake one, and I'm like, man, I don't know too much about Johnny Joestar, but I'm gonna play as him. I was like, it's weird because like you think, oh yeah, he's on a horse, he's a paraplegic jockey who's trying to get his legs back, and he's on his horse, but like because everyone has like most of the people have 2 alt ways of play. And he kind of just falls off. One of his ones is he kind of just uses spin to like crawl. and that's how he fights. And I'm like, wild. I can play as a paraplegic, and I can play as him on a horse, and I can use that horse to kick a bird. And then he fires his fingernails.
Oh, that's gross. I think I saw people posting about how, like, if you could battle like Josuke, who has the power of healing, and what's his name, Johnny, and that like Josuke can like fix Johnny's legs just to like break them again while they're fighting.
Yeah, so his like special move is he heals the opponent completely and then batters them. Like he'll take down everything back to where it was and then more. It's great. But my personal problem when I get into something is I need to know everything. So I go on the Wikipedia, I go to the wikis and do all that stuff. So I know what happens in Speedball Run and JoJolion some of what happens in JoJolion, but not all of it. Like I don't know really how it ends. But so Speedball Run is wild because the president of the United States gets a guy to set up a special race for horse jockeys so he can gather the remaining parts of Jesus Christ himself so he can further the power of the United States.
I kind of like, I knew some of that. I didn't know like all of that.
I'm not going to say how it ends because I know how it ends, but I'm looking forward to it. But also there's the concept of like stands carrying over that's not necessarily fully fleshed out, which you'll see. It's weird. Like Johnny is Jonathan, but like they have inherently different stands, which they shouldn't, based on the other characters.
Oh yeah, like there's like Dio Brando, but isn't he like a sweetie pie in SBR?
He becomes a velociraptor. He also becomes a velociraptor.
Oh, word.
But then there's also another Dio Brando who has the word.
Huh. Yeah, I know things get like really like off the rails in like SBR and JoJolion. I especially JoJolion because like isn't JoJolion like a parallel of Part 4? Like it's a mirror world of Part 4.
So I mean, Josuke Higashikata Part 8 is not. I've seen him compared closer to Jotaro than Josuke, and
is that Gappy? Is this okay? Gotcha.
That's Gappy. Gappy is called Gappy because he's got a gap teeth.
Doesn't he also have 4 testicles?
Probably he is technically Josephume Kujo merged with Yoshikage Kira of that universe. And Yoshikage Kira is a descendant of Jonathan Joestar. And then there's Josephume Kujo, who's possibly... It takes a lot of the names and like flips them, and it's weird.
I kind of love it. It's like fan.
But it kind of goes like Johnny, is a British man in the United States, and then he goes and marries a Japanese woman, and then it goes straight into Japan. So Holly is half Japanese, or at least part Japanese. But yeah, it turns everything on his head. Like interesting ways.
I love that Araki has been able to just get as weird as he wants with it.
Yeah, no one's stopped him.
It reminds me of like, Miura with Berserk, Oda with One Piece, Araki with JoJo. It's like I love that these series can be like long and they can grow with an author, and that they are not expected to shill, like to like whatever consumers want. Like they make what they want. And like, despite, like the manga industry being this really, really like heinous machine that overworks its creators, like rip, like, Mira, like with Berserk, like it is kind of astounding that they can have that much creative liberty over their work, though, still.
Yeah. And then there's Araki's art style that is an ever-changing
Yeah,
thing.
you pop off. We're gonna end the episode with
my god. Like every single part, like you can like look up JoJo's Bizarre Adventure art change, and each part will have various art styles in the beginning to the end. Like Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency are kind of normal-ish
beefcakes
for the time. Big beefcakes. And then Stardust Crusaders, like the facial features become very jagged and like sharp. And then halfway through Diamond is Unbreakable, they soften and like round out, but like they don't have too much detail. Like noses aren't as detailed as they were. They're just kind of rounded and like they kind of blend in with the rest of the face. And then in Golden Wind, there's a shit ton of detail and line work that it sharpens it a little bit, but it's still round, and that kind of continues into Stone Ocean. And then looking at Speedball Run, it becomes almost like realistic, more so, and like everything is a lot softer and just probably like you can't look at the original Jonathan Joestar and then look at JoJo Josuke and be like, these are done by the same guy. You wouldn't be able to tell. Like, yeah, certain manga have been going on for 2 decades and change, but like you can look at the first issue of One Piece to the current issue of One Piece and be like, oh yeah, this is drawn by the same artist. But like this, no, like it doesn't make sense the way how much it changes, and it's fascinating.
It is very fascinating, and I think it's really cool, and I think it's one of those things that like you can't ever get bored of JoJo because it's just you never know how Araki will surprise you, and I think
he tries to keep it as fresh as possible, and I think that the anime does a great job of like capturing that art change. But of course, it picks the very like it picks like the most defining one of each arc.
I really, really, really love the artwork for Golden Wind and Diamond is Unbreakable. I love like you see the shift because like Jotaro's like a bancho boy, but then Josuke starts off like really beefy and like with this, like the pompadour, like he looks like a delinquent. But then by the end of Diamond is Unbreakable, he's a very soft, androgynous, like fashionable man.
That is where the broad shoulder tall guy ends. Like, and because Giorno is really small. I think he's the smallest JoJo. Other than maybe Johnny. Because Johnny is, I think, 5'7".
Oh, dang.
As a full-grown adult.
But yeah, it's just that shift is like, he loves fashion. He loves fashion. He likes Vogue. He likes art a lot. And he was just really influenced by magazines. And I love seeing that he like indulged in that.
Just seeing the Gucci stuff. Like those collabs are just wild.
Yeah. Also, Araki's JoJo art has been exhibited in the Louvre.
Yeah, that's not something you can think of and you're like, oh yeah, that's normal.
Yeah, I don't know if I think I don't know if he's the only manga artist to be. I don't think he's the only one, but he's one of few. Like, it's very rare to get like manga art in like the Louvre to begin with, because it's a very like elitist sort of, like the art is very like elitist. So the fact that like out of all of the manga, it's like Araki with his weird little passion project, like that is what gets showcased to the world, and I like love that for him.
Yeah, I didn't know he was in the Louvre. I mean, I'm looking at that now. Like, there's him and a few other like comic book artists from around the world. None that I'm like, oh, I recognize this name, but like it's a bunch of European ones. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's my boy. Go Araki. But yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at it. It's exactly who you think it is,
Rohan. Of course, it's Rohan.
Oh, the whole room was Rohan.
Yep.
Wow.
But then the the Gucci collab was Jolene, Bruno, and Giorno. Gucci, JoJo. Wait, let me get this to Google real quick. I know it was at the very least Jolene and Bruno.
Rohan, I think there was. Yeah, I think it was. There is a Bacchio.
Yes, okay.
In one image, but I could have sworn I saw ones of other characters.
Yeah, but it's still so cool. Yeah, like Jolene has her own little like Gucci, like there's like a Jolene Gucci dress that like is very, very expensive. But yeah, no, I think
it looks. I
think it's kind of crazy that his art has evolved to the point that it like influences art and fashion like outside of the realm of manga. It's just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Well, thanks everyone for going on this bizarre little adventure with us.
And if you have any more interest in anything else we do with Gatecrashers, you can follow us at Gatecrashers Pod on Twitter, and gatecrashers.fan is our website where you can read our articles and listen. That's a way to find various episodes of the podcast, or you can listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
It's the Gatecrashers.